Now we will see more ways to make a data persistent. So let's write what are the ways that we have seen so far first, and then we will move ahead. So what we have to get here is our sticky note. So now let me, yeah, as we have done the data persistence. Yeah, persistent data is done. So now let me close this one. Yeah, now data persistence. So one is volume mounts, two bind mounts, three data containers, and four NFS. Okay, so first two we have seen with example. So now we are gonna see the third one, the data containers. If you use volumes a lot on a host, managing the containers startup can get tricky. So you may also want the data to be managed by Docker exclusively and not be generally accessible on the host. So one way to manage these things more cleanly is to use the data only container design pattern. So in this case, our problem statement is we want to use an external volume within a container, but you only want Docker to access the files. So how can we provide a solution? So we have to start up a data container and use the volumes from flag. Volumes, it's a long option, and from another option. So we'll merge both, and volumes from flag when running other containers. So let's take this example. So this is our host 1. Let's call it as a host 1, and this host 1, there are three containers are spinning. One is container A, container B, container C, and the host is running three containers, and each pointed at the hosts var db tables. It's a bind mount. Okay, you see that bind mount. So we have to use volume option, and then var db table, and db is the directory inside the container where the data stores or database stores. Okay, so now each container A, container B, container C of database of the container A internal directory DB is attached with var DB tables, and container B DB directory internal directory has been attached with the var DB tables, and container C internal directory DB has been attached with the var DB tables. Okay, so that's the if this is the case, so what's gonna happen? So each container has mounted the directory separately. So if the location of the folder changes or the mount needs to be moved, each container has to be reconfigured. Other than that, there won't be any issue, because uh, based on each directory, so all the data will be saved. Container A's, container B's, container C's, all the data will be saved in this directory. But the issue here is, if the location of the folder changes or the mount needs the bind mount that we have mentioned, that is forward slash var forward slash db forward slash tables. If that bind mount needs to be moved, each container has to be reconfigured again. It's a huge work. So do we have any solution to this? Yes, do we have? Yes, we will see that. That's what is our data container. So let's look into that. Host 2, so we have taken host 2. This is a blue machine. Host 1 is a pink machine. Now we will enter into host 2, a blue machine. So blue machine consists of again 3 containers. The host 2 is running 4 containers. In this we will take 3 containers only. So the 3 containers from the previous, so basically total it will run 4 containers, out of which 3 containers are running services or running an application. Okay, what is one container another container is doing, that we are going to discuss. Okay, the 3 containers from the previous host, that same similar kind of containers, so containers A, containers B and container C are running with a different kind of command. Now the command that we are going to give is volumes option from flag here. Okay, whereas here we gave just v option, small v, that's a short v, short option, and then we have mounted the bind mount location with the database location of the container. But here we are using volumes option and from. Let's do that. But this is what initial one. Okay, similar to this. So figure shows the, now the problem here, we know that the problem with this everybody knows. Similar thing, if the location of the folder changes or the mount needs to be moved, each container has to be configured. So now how to solve this? The solution is this. So the data container. So this command volume option and bind mount will change to this volume from DC, the data container. The name of the data container that we have given is DC. So I'll animate it one more time. From this option of bind mount, connecting all containers together with one bind mount, we can do this using this command. Okay, so figure shows the structure of data container pattern and explains how it works. The key thing to note is that in the second host, in host number 2, the containers don't need to know where the data is located on disk. So all they need to know is the name of the data container and they're good to go. So this can make the operation containers more portable. So another benefit of this approach over the straightforward mapping of host directories is that access to these files is managed by Docker, so which means that it's less likely that a non-Docker process will affect the contents. So one more thing, the most important point is the data only containers. The data only container doesn't need to run. A common source of confusion is whether the data only container needs to run. It doesn't. It merely needs to exist to have been run on the host and not deleted. So the single data container mounts the host's volume creating a single point of responsibility for data mounts on the host. So the most important aspect is the data container doesn't need to run, it needs to exist. What does it mean? So let's take container A is a SQL database, container B is Postgres, and container C is some Nginx, some application, an application based server service. Now once you spin these containers, this container will spin throughout its life until you stop it and delete it. Whereas a data container, after spinning the container, it will go to the exit state. It doesn't need to be run or it doesn't need to be spin forever. It needs to exist like that in an exited condition. That's it. So using this data container, we are benefiting such a case if the location of the folder changes or the mount needs to be moved, each container doesn't have to be configured.